If you want more jobs, you need to stop chasing new leads. You need to start closing the ones that you already paid for, though. Most epoxy contractors do not have a lead problem. They have a workflow problem. And here's how I know. You get a lead at 9 a.m., you respond at 2 p.m. because you were on a job. They text back at 4 p.m. asking for a quote. You say, I'll get that to you tonight. Then you send it the next morning and they say, hey, that looks good. Let me just talk to my wife. And then silence. 3 days later, you send their just checking in text message and you get no response to that, right? A week later, you try one more time and still nothing. So in your head, you mark it as lost and you move on. But here's what actually happened. That lead was not a bad lead. The lead got delayed. The lead got ignored during a critical decision window as well. And the lead was left with no next step, no deadline, and wasn't shown any urgency. And that's where your revenue disappears, not into thin air, but into process gaps. And here's the truth that nobody in the Facebook ads world wants to say out loud. More leads will not fix a weak system or a weak process. More leads just amplify the chaos that you already have. I've seen contractors go, epoxy contractors specifically, go from 20 leads a month to 60 leads a month, and their revenue stayed flat. And why is this? Because they were closing at 15% before they got more leads, and they're still closing at 15% now. They just have more people to ignore, basically, right? So when your workflow is tight, you don't actually need any miracles to come up. You don't need the perfect lead, and you don't need a market that gets it, right? You just need reps. That's why we don't sell leads that never stop. We don't run your ads, and we don't promise you 50 qualified homeowners a month or anything like that, right? We install decision control because more booked jobs comes from process, not from just volume of leads. That's not how you get more booked jobs. And you yourself, as the epoxy owner, you're not stuck because of your work ethic, right? I know you work 60-hour work weeks, right? You show up consistently, even when you don't feel good, and you care about the work that you do. So you're not stuck because of your work ethic. Like I said, you're stuck because of the workflow that you have installed into your business. And most guys don't even really know what that means yet, right? So let's just take a look at the numbers and let's run a normal month for a small to mid-size epoxy contractor shop, right? Let's say you get 40 leads. Let's say your average ticket price is $3,000 per job, right? So if you close 20%, that's 8 jobs. That's $2,400 in revenue. If you increase your close rate and you close at 30% instead of 20%, that's 12 jobs instead of the 8 jobs for the same exact 40 leads. That's instead of $24,000 in revenue at the 20% close rate for the same amount of leads, you would actually be making $36,000 in revenue for that month, right? Again, same leads, same ad spend, the same market that you're working in. It's the same you as well, but that is an extra $12,000 a month in increase to your revenue just from one improvement, increasing your close rate, right? That's 4 more jobs with no extra ad spend. And here's the punchline that most people miss with this. If you refuse to improve your close rate and you still want that extra 12K in revenue every single month, you're going to try to buy it by buying more leads. But at a 20% close rate to get 12 jobs, you're going to need 60 leads. So you're spending more on ads. You're going to be fielding more calls. You're going to be sending more quotes and you're managing more chaos, all to get the exact same outcome that you could have gotten just by tightening your systems up or by tightening your process up, right? Your close rate itself is actually a lead source. It's very literally a lead source. It's just cheaper to close those leads that are closer to closing. It creates jobs without you having to buy more leads, and it actually makes you money to close more jobs, right? And it doesn't break your calendar, and it doesn't require you to outbid every other contractor in your zip code. Right. So let's just compound this a little bit. There's 3 contractors, one with a 10% close rate, one with a 20% close rate, and one with a 30% close rate, all with the same amount of leads, right? 40 leads. And you can see that right here. So let's just do it month to month. Month 1, 40 leads at a 10% close rate. 10% of those 40 leads is 12K. So that would be 12K every single month, which is $36,000 in revenue in 90 days, which really is not a lot in the epoxy world, right? But let's just say that you double that close rate, right? 40 leads, 8 jobs instead of 4 jobs, and that's double the revenue, 24K over the course of 90 days. That actually is 72K in revenue. That's a lot better. We're looking a lot better at that point, right? And then contractors see at that 30% close rate of closing 30% of the 40 leads, that's 12 jobs per month. That's $36,000 per month. And that comes out to over $100,000 in a 3-month period, right? That's a $36,000 to a $72,000 difference in one quarter, not from working harder, not from running better ads, not from getting more leads, but from following up consistently and removing decision friction in the sales process the right way. So, what exactly kills your close rate? Here's what most guys do, okay? A lead comes in at 10 a.m. They're on the job, so they respond at 2 p.m. The customer asks, hey, can you come out and give me a quote? The owner says, yeah, I'm booked this week, but I can come out Friday. Friday comes, he goes out, measures, takes photos, talks about the job. Customer says, great, send me a quote. The owner says, hey, I'll send that quote to you tonight. But if the owner doesn't send that quote tonight, he sends it tomorrow or 2 days later because he had installs lined up, right? The customer gets it. All of that's fine. They open it. They say, hey, looks good. Need to run it by my wife, like we said earlier. The contractor says, hey, no problem. Let me know. And now that lead is just floating around. There's no next step. There's no follow-up scheduled. There's no deadline given. There's no urgency expressed. There's no ownership of the sales process, essentially, right? And then, so 3 days later, the contractor sends out a, hey, just checking in text message, like we said earlier. Customer says, I'm still thinking about it, right? Another week goes by, contractor tries one more time, there's no response. And again, like I said, you just mark it as lost in your head and you moved on, right? So let's break down what actually killed this deal, right? There was a delayed response from that 10 a.m. when the lead came in till 2 p.m. when the owner replies to that lead. The lead has already called 2 other companies. One of them answered immediately and they booked an appointment for Wednesday already, right? And then the appointment delayed. By the time that you showed up on Friday, the customer already had 2 other quotes in hand, right? And then the quote delay is killing that close rate. The competitor who came Wednesday sent their quote Wednesday night. You sent yours Friday. Guess whose quote is sitting at the top of the kitchen counter during the family decisions meeting, right? And then there was no follow-up structure. You followed up twice, but both times it was with zero urgency, zero reasons for the customer to act, zero next steps for the customer to take. And the customer, they have an automated sequence. On day 1, they sent out the quote via email and text. The next day, they asked if the customer got a chance to review it. 2 days later, they said, we have an opening next week if you'd like to lock it in. And then a week from that time that they sent the quote, there's an actual expiration reminder saying, hey, like this quote is only valid till next Friday. You sent, just checking in. Do you have any thoughts? Are you guys ready? And you wonder why they went with somebody else, right? That lead is not a bad lead. It was actually a great lead. They asked for a quote. They engaged. They said that it looked good, but then your process actually trained them towards indecision. You were slow, you were passive, you left gaps, you let time kill momentum in the sales process as well. And the customer did what humans do when there's no structure. They drift, they delay, they forget about you, and they get other quotes, right? So now, if you're blaming lead quality all the time, I'm not mad at you. No one's mad at you. I get it. It's easier to blame the lead than to fix the system that's causing the problem, right? But I'm telling you, the fix is your workflow. Because if your response time is slow and your follow-up is random and your quotes sit in inboxes rotting, you can have the best leads in the world and you're still going to lose. You could have people calling you saying, hey, I want my garage done. I've got $8,000. Can you start next Monday? And if your workflow has gaps, you're still going to find ways to lose that deal because workflow beats intention every single time. So here's the new way to do things. Here's the system. It's really not complicated. It's just structured, right? And structure is what separates 20K months from 60K months, okay? So rule number 1 is there should be no floating leads, right? Most epoxy contractors, you just send out one text and then you give up, right? So the core principle here is that no lead is allowed to exist in limbo. Every lead must be in one of 3 realities at all time. Either contact is in progress, which means you're actively pursuing that lead, and there's next steps scheduled, like an on-site is scheduled. The lead came in, you're contacting them, and you've got the appointment booked, right? Which is the next one of the 3 is appointment booked, where that appointment is locked in and it's confirmed, or they're marked as lost, right? With like a reason, like it needs to be documented and done. If it's not in one of these 3 states, you don't really actually have a pipeline. You've just got a junk drawer of leads, right? Let's see a lead calls you at 10:50 10:15 and you're on a job and you miss it, here's what should happen automatically. At 10:16, 1 minute later, instantly, you should say, hey, I just missed your call. Your system should automate this actually. But and we have this set up if you guys don't have this, but right away, you should send them a text message that says, hey, I just missed your call. I'm on a job right now, but I can call you back soon. Or you can book a time that works for you here at this booking link, right? 30 minutes later, you can try again. If nobody answers, just give them a call. No one answers, leave them a voicemail saying, hey, this is Jesse with Never Stop. I saw you called about epoxy flooring. I'll try you again in about an hour, or feel free to text me back or use that link I sent to lock in a time. Waited about an hour. If there's still nothing happening, just text them again. Hey, did you still want to connect? I have time at 1 or at 3 p.m. today if either one of those works. And then tomorrow you can say, hey, just wanted to make sure we didn't lose you. If you're still interested in getting a quote, here's my calendar link. If now's not the right time, no worries, just let me know, right? And if there's no response after that, that's when you mark them as lost, right? And that you weren't able to contact them. So why does this actually matter? The reason this matters is, like I said, most epoxy contractors are sending one text. Maybe they make one phone call, maybe they make a few, but then you give up, right? And then you wonder why your close rate is 15% or lower, right? The data is clear though. 50% of leads respond after the second or third touch point. 30% of leads respond after the fourth or fifth touch point, and only 20% respond after the first attempt. So if you're stopping after the first attempt, you're leaving 80% of revenue on the table, essentially, right? So rule number 2 is you need to work backwards from the cash. Owners, really good owners, don't start the day at the top of the funnel with the new leads that are coming in. They start at the money, right? Where's all of the money at? The revenue first daily order is actually following up with quotes that you've already sent out or quotes that have already been accepted. You need to send them for invoices, obviously, right? And then you need to work on the quotes that are sent out and like that are waiting on a decision, that you need to follow up with those and you need to close those leads, right? You need a process to make sure that you know what's going on, so that way you can actually do this as well too. And then you need to follow up with the leads that are over 7 days old, and you need to try to either revive them or you need to try to kill those quotes off so you don't keep on spending time on them, right? And then you need to just check your on-site appointments, just make sure that they're confirmed, and then you get to the new leads, right? So you work backwards like that from the people that are needing invoices all the way back to the new lead. And the reason that you do this again is because if you're chasing all of the new leads while you have quotes sitting out, it's like pouring water in a bucket with holes, right? Let's say that you got 10 quotes out right now. 4 of them are, let's say, 7 days old, and they haven't responded to you at all. What most epoxy contractors do is nothing. They just assume that that deal is dead. But what you should do instead is, after 7 days after the quote, you should at least send them a text message saying, hey, I just wanted to follow up on that quote I sent last week. I know these decisions take time. Is there anything I can clarify? Or would it help if we hopped on a quick call, right? 3 days later, if there's no response, try to give them a call. If they don't answer, you can leave them a voicemail and say, hey, this is Jesse from Never Stop. I sent over a quote last week. Just want to make sure that it didn't get buried. Give me a call back if you'd like to move forward or if you have any questions. Otherwise, I assume you went a different direction, and I'll close out your file. And then just wait a couple more days and shoot them a quick text and say, hey, I'm just closing out quotes from the other week. If you'd still like to move forward, let me know by Friday and I'll honor the pricing for you, right? Otherwise, no worries. Feel free to reach out if you need anything done down the road, right? And what happens when you do this is that you'll recover 20 to 30% of those quotes that are more than 7 days old, just using that exact text sequence, right? That's like 2 to 3 extra jobs per month that you would have lost by doing nothing. And it's crazy. Every time that I sign up a new client, I ask them for the most recent lead list that they have. It's usually like 40 leads over the last month. We text them, they get 2, 3, 4 jobs out of it. It's crazy. Like I can do that like clockwork. It's honestly wild. So don't sleep on that one, right? And then rule 3 is that you need to take daily activities or perform daily activities that protect your revenue in your business, right? Revenue, just like as a principle, it doesn't happen on accident, right? You took certain actions to start this business. You had to buy certain equipment. You had to get certain knowledge. It was not an accident that you are even listening to this video right now, if you're listening, right? But revenue itself also does not happen by accident. It happens from and in protected time blocks. So what that looks like is every single day, these blocks that you can set aside, that you need to set aside on your calendar, they're non-negotiable time blocks where you don't negotiate on these, right? The first block is what I call a pipeline review. You want to look at your sales pipeline and all of the opportunities that you have to close deals, whether that's a new lead or they're waiting to get invoiced. You want to take a look at your entire sales pipeline and identify the next steps for each of these leads. Like if there's a new lead, they need a ballpark or an onsite. If they're onsite, we're probably waiting to go to the quote, so we don't need to follow up with them. But if they've already been sent a quote and they haven't closed or accepted the quote, we probably need to follow up with those people, right? So like I said, you need to flag the stale quotes. You need to flag missed follow-ups. Or if for some reason there was appointments that have been like promised but not set and didn't get booked, you need to book those as well. And I suggest doing this 30 minutes every single day. Just look at your pipeline. If you have a CRM, like you should have one at this point. It's 2026. If you don't, let me know. I can always help you out with that. But yeah, you just take 8 a.m. or whatever, whenever you're doing your day. I don't know when you guys normally do your installs. If you start your installs right at 7 a.m. and you're out there, I would do this for like an hour or two before you go to the field. If you're going to be the one that's doing this, otherwise you should hire somebody to do this. They can start their day at 8 and they can work a couple hours. You could hire a VA, whatever, right? But that's that first block. The second block is that new lead contact block. So you want to take about an hour just to contact every single new lead that has come in the last 24 hours. And then give yourself that hour to be there, to be able to answer the questions, hop on a call, book an appointment, or get the next steps in the process scheduled for that lead, right? So that would be an hour. So that's about an hour and a half right there. And then at the end of the day, let's say some people came in, you went to estimates and you weren't able to send the quote for some reason, like with the customer, then later in the day, you want to set aside time to follow up on quotes that have already gone out, or to send out invoices, right? For like accepted quotes, and then try to prep for the next day's appointments that you might have, right? So why do most epoxy contractors resist this kind of structure and this setup? They'll say either it's too complicated, they're too confusing, or usually it's that they're too busy. I hear this all the time. And here's what I can say to that is that you're busy because your revenue is not managed. You're running installs every single day. You're answering random phone calls at random times, and you're putting out all of the fires with the quotes, with the installs, with the entire business, right? But you're not doing the 90 minutes a day that actually creates revenue, which is talking to your leads. So you stay stuck at 20K a month, 25K a month, and then you can't hire anybody, and then you stay stuck in the business. And it's not because you're not working hard, right? It's because you're working reactively instead of proactively. So here's what that looks like in practice. On Monday morning, 8 a.m., you sit down with a coffee, you open your CRM, and you review your sales pipeline. And you see there's 3 new leads from the weekend that need to be contacted, right? There's 2 quotes from last week that need follow-up. There's 1 quote from like almost 2 weeks ago that needs follow-up a little bit more in depth because they're not moving forward at this point, right? And then you've got 1 quote that you sent last week that accepted the quote, but they need to be invoiced and they need to pay the deposit, right? So you see all of that between 8 a.m. and then 8:30. At 8:30 a.m., you call or text those 3 new leads, right? 2 of them, let's say they answer, and you book appointments, 1 for Wednesday, 1 for Thursday. That 3rd lead doesn't answer, and you send the booking link and you schedule a call back for tomorrow in the system, right? And then that takes you 30 minutes. So at 9 a.m., you follow up on those 2 quotes that you had sent. One of them says, hey, we're ready to move forward. You send the invoice immediately, right? The other one says, hey, we're still deciding between you and one other company. You ask, hey, what's the main thing that you're comparing? And they're saying, hey, we're just really concerned about the price, right? And you say, got it. If price is the deciding factor, let me see if I can have any wiggle room on this quote, right? When are you planning to make the decision? And they're saying, hey, by Friday is when we want to make that decision. So you say, hey, let me give you a call on Thursday. We can look at the quote. We can look at the numbers. And then you do that obviously as well, right? Let's say 15 minutes is how long it takes for you to give those 2-cent quotes a follow-up. So let's say 9:15 a.m., you attempt to recover that stale quote from about 2 weeks ago. There's no answer when you try to call them. You send the the day 10 text message, and then you mark it for a final follow-up for Wednesday, right? That takes you 15 minutes right there. And then at 9:30, you send the invoice for the one that was accepted. You text the customer and just say, hey, that invoice was set. Once I get the deposit, I'll get you on the schedule. Let me know if you have any questions. The total amount of time that takes right there, right? That's 90 minutes. The result is that you got 2 new appointments booked. You got 1 deposit secured. You got 1 quote moving to close, and you got 1 stale quote getting ready to get that final follow-up attempt, right? That's 4 or 5 revenue generating actions in 90 minutes, an hour and a half, right? And if you skip this, you're just flying blind. This is what we actually install for you for you guys at Never Stop, right? Not just tips, not motivation, not you need to try harder, right? We install systems or processes where leads get answered fast in under 5 minutes when possible, that appointments get booked without back and forth from you. We send out booking links. We automatically book those for you. We send out confirmations. We send out reminders of those appointments as well. So there's no shows. Your quotes, they don't end up what we call rot, right? Your quotes don't rot, which means that they're not going to sit there and go bad. There's follow-up sequences that that will run and help the customer make a decision. And it also helps our processes help you understand what you need to do in the follow-up process, right? And then everything stops when it should. There's no leads that are floating around. There's no quotes that are in limbo. That's how you stop obsessing over lead quality, because your workflow does the heavy lifting. You're not relying on motivation. You're not relying on being on it. You're relying on a machine that runs whether you feel like it or not. And that's where revenue becomes predictable instead of random. And you can do this quick audit and just answer these questions. Like, do you have any leads right now that have no next step scheduled? If yes, how many leads do you have? And what are you going to do about it today? Right? How many quotes do you have out? Not just a few, like an exact number of how many quotes do you have? How many of those quotes are older than 7 days? And what's your plan on reviving those quotes? And do you have daily money blocks on your calendar, like locked in, non-negotiable, and protected from installs or other distractions? Does your follow-up stop when they book, or does it keep on firing? If it keeps on firing, you're going to annoy the customers and you're burning trust as well. If you can't get your systems together, are you going to be able to install your epoxy system properly? Probably not, is what they're thinking, right? And can you tell me what your close rate is right now? Not a guess, actual close rate data. If you can't answer all of those questions really fast, you don't have control of your business yet. And control is the whole game, because revenue doesn't come from hustle. It comes from clarity. Clarity on where your leads are, clarity on what happens next, clarity on who owns that step, and clarity on when everything is due, when it needs to be done, right? When you have that clarity, close rates, they climb. When you don't, you're just spinning. And if you do nothing else, at least do this. Tomorrow morning, schedule those money blocks, right? 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., do that pipeline review. 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., do that new lead contact workflow we talked about. And then later in the day from 2 to 3 p.m., do that quote follow-up, right? Block these off in your calendar, set them in your mind as non-negotiable, and treat them like your install appointments, right? That one change alone will increase your close rate. And why is this? Because you're going to stop letting the installs steal your follow-up time, right? You'll stop trying to get to it later, and you'll start controlling revenue instead of reacting to it. If you want the exact stage map that we install, plus the daily revenue routine, plus the follow-up sequences that run on autopilot, book a call with me at neverstopagency.com. If you're doing 20K to 30K per month as an epoxy flooring company, you already have leads coming in, and you want this system built into your business so that way your close rate climbs without more ad spend, reach out to me and I'll send you the breakdown. We can go over your numbers. We can get you off to the races.